What if the walls meant to contain justice were turned into an instrument of unimaginable suffering? In the darkest corners of the world, there are prisons so notorious that surviving in them becomes a battle. Inmates face brutal environments that seem to break their spirit, from overcrowding to severe violence and inhumane conditions that define life behind bars. These 10 prisons are not only the worst, they are nightmares where every day is a struggle to stay alive and hold on to a shred of humanity. So grab your flashlight and let's delve into the dark corridors of these 10 worst women's prisons in the world. And if you feel that same spark of intrigue and passion to unearth more hidden truths, don't hesitate to subscribe to our channel. It's free and will take you on endless, fascinating adventures that will transform your perception of the world. Let's get started. Number 10. Patarei Prison, Estonia. Nestled off the coast of Tallinn, Estonia, lies Patarei Prison, a place that looks like something out of a horror movie. Although it once served as a military base, it later became one of the worst prisons for female inmates in the world. Patarei Prison was originally built in the 19th century as a sea fortress to protect Tallinn from naval attacks. However, by the time it was converted into a prison in the 1920s, it began to amass a sinister reputation. The building, with its thick stone walls and barred windows, was designed to be intimidating. And yes, it was intimidating. But not just prisoners. Even visitors felt a terrifying chill as soon as they entered. Patarei became notorious for its treatment of female inmates, many of whom were political prisoners during the Soviet era. Now imagine being in a place where the cold is not just outside, but seeps into your very soul, with little more than a straw mattress to comfort you. One former prisoner recounted how frost formed on the cell walls during the winter, forcing women to huddle together for warmth. More often than not, women had no choice but to share thin blankets that offered no real protection from the cold. She said it felt like the cold was in your bones, and there was no way to escape it. As a result of this, female inmates frequently fell ill with hypothermia, and respiratory infections were common due to the lack of proper heating in an overcrowded area. As is well known, Patarei was notorious for its extreme overcrowding. It was not just a problem, but a motto of the prison. Initially designed to house around 1,200 inmates, it often housed over 4,200 individuals at its peak. Female inmates were constantly sharing tight quarters, sometimes as many as 40 individuals in a space intended for far fewer, leading to substandard living conditions. As if the prison's history wasn't chilling enough, many believe it is haunted by the spirits of those who suffered within its walls. Visitors often report strange occurrences, cold drafts in empty rooms, whispers echoing down long hallways, and an overwhelming sense of sadness that seems to cling to every stone. Number 9. Julia Tutwiler Prison, Alabama. Behind the imposing fences of Julia Tutwiler Prison lies a reality that few dare to imagine. It is not just a prison, but a place of unexplained suffering for decades. Located in Wetumpka, Alabama, Julia Tutwiler Prison was opened in 1942. It was named after Julia Tutwiler, a reformer who advocated for better living conditions in prisons. Ironically, this very prison that bears her name has become a subject of abuse and neglect, making it one of the worst prisons for women in the United States. From the beginning, Tutwiler was planned to accommodate approximately 550 prisoners, but has frequently exceeded that capacity, occasionally housing close to 1,000 individuals. Overcrowding has resulted in critical situations with basic human rights being regularly abused. In 2013, Tutwiler was listed by Mother Jones as one of the 10 worst prisons in America, specifically due to widespread sexual abuse and insufficient medical care. It's almost as if they forgot to read the memo about treating inmates like human beings. As if that weren't enough, the Equal Justice Initiative found disturbing evidence of sexual violence occurring within its facilities, like a twisted game of who can break the rules first. Interrogations with more than 50 female prisoners uncovered a disturbing trend of officer attacks on inmates, including cases where inmates conceived as a result of being raped by guards. The EJI's findings resulted in a complaint filed with the U.S. Department of Justice, which then verified that Alabama was violating the Eighth Amendment by failing to protect inmates from sexual abuse. It's safe to say that this is not the kind of attention any facility wants. Now imagine starting each day in a place where there is no guarantee of your safety. Women here experience consequences for speaking out about abuse, such as being ostracized or facing retaliation from guards. One prisoner described how her storage box, containing precious letters and photos of her children, was unfairly taken away, making her feel as if her essence had been stripped away from her. With the prison's old and neglected infrastructure, female inmates frequently experience poor medical care. One case was reported of a woman who nearly died due to poor management of her health condition before receiving emergency treatment outside the prison. Talk about an unexpected turn of events that no one wanted. The lack of mental health support only adds to the chaos, creating an environment where despair thrives like weeds in an abandoned garden. Despite numerous reports highlighting these abuses, meaningful reforms have been slower than molasses in January. In 2016, Alabama Governor Robert Bentley announced plans to close Tutwiler as part of a broader prison reform initiative, but that was like promising to clean your room without picking up a single sock. Yet as of 2020, the prison remains open, its legacy of suffering intact. The stories emerging from Tutwiler reveal not just statistics, but the profound human cost of incarceration in such an environment. Women who enter this prison, often already traumatized by their pasts as victims of abuse, find their spirits crushed even further by the harsh realities of prison life. Number 8. Tadmor Prison, Syria. The mere mention of Tadmor Prison, situated in the vast aridity of the Syrian desert near Palmyra, evokes feelings of fear and hopelessness. Often labeled hell on earth, it has gained notoriety for its harsh treatment of prisoners, especially women. Imagine a place where the atmosphere is heavy with the weight of pain, where optimism is only a vague memory, and where sounds of anguish echo through dark, chilling corridors. Initially built as a military base under French rule, Tadmor later became a jail known for housing political rebels during the 1980s, under the rule of Hafez al-Assad. It was seen as a representation of tyranny and cruelty. If you're looking for a place that specializes in breaking spirits rather than rehabilitating individuals, congratulations, you found it. Guards would often say, "We are God. Your life and death are under our control." This terrifying phrase encapsulated the prevailing doctrine not only within the confines of Tadmor Prison in Palmyra, but more broadly in Syrian penitentiaries, especially when it came to political detainees. Amnesty International said it was characterized by suffering, with torture and humiliation occurring daily. If you think your worst day at work was terrible, imagine experiencing it in a place where simply being there is a kind of punishment. On June 27, 1980, Tadmor witnessed one of its most notorious events, a massacre in which an estimated 600 to 1,000 prisoners were brutally murdered after a failed assassination attempt on President Assad. This cruel act was not just an isolated incident, but part of a broader trend of state-sanctioned violence that defined daily life in Tadmor. The circumstances at Tadmor are extremely grim and depressing. Imagine being locked up in a place where basic human rights are absent. No family visits, no access to books, no way to interact with the outside world. Prisoners endure constant psychological torment and physical abuse. Torture techniques often involve brutal beatings with sticks and cables, electric shocks that cause permanent scarring, and degrading acts such as being forced to swallow dead animals. One former prisoner recounted her experience. She said a knock on the cell door often meant one thing, that another prisoner had died. The yard, which should have offered a breath of fresh air, instead became a stage for arbitrary executions. Guards would call prisoners in for air, only to subject them to brutal beatings or worse. In this environment, survival becomes an act of defiance against despair. Female detainees are often locked in solitary confinement or paired with another woman in conditions that resemble a nightmare more than reality. They endure savage beatings and sexual assault with the added humiliation of being forced to confess to crimes they did not commit. Despite the oppressive silence imposed by the regime, stories from Tadmor have begun to emerge, testimonies detailing the horrors faced by prisoners. Memoirs written by former prisoners have emerged online, circumventing state censorship and shedding light on their experiences. Number 7. Bang Kwang Central Prison, Thailand. What if your first day behind bars involved being shackled in heavy iron chains? That's the reality for anyone who steps into Bang Kwang Prison, also known as the Bangkok Hilton. But don't be fooled by the nickname. This isn't a luxury hotel. This prison that houses many foreign inmates is a tough one that handles prisoners on death row and those on long sentences. From the moment prisoners arrive, they are greeted not with basic amenities, but rather with a set of shackles chained to their ankles for the first 3 months of their stay, while inmates on death row must have their shackles permanently welded on. Yes, you heard that right. These shackles aren't just for show. They're a reminder that freedom is a distant memory, and your new life inside Bang Kwang will test you in ways you never imagined. Built between 1927 and 1931, Bang Kwang was initially conceived by King Rama V as a jail for the worst criminals. It was established to house those awaiting execution or serving long sentences, but over time it has transformed into a place that could make even the most hardened criminals reconsider their life choices. The prison houses around 6,000 inmates, many of whom are foreigners caught in the web of Thailand's strict drug laws. The condition of these prisoners is so precarious that many of them lose their sanity or their lives. Food is scarce, and what is provided often resembles more something you'd find at the bottom of a dumpster than a meal. The infamous chit system means that only the wealthiest prisoners can afford a decent meal, while others are forced to subsist on a bowl of rice and vegetables if they're lucky. Imagine trying to negotiate with your fellow inmates for a few extra bites like it's a high-stakes game of poker. Think you've heard it all? Wait, there's more. Bang Kwang isn't just about bad food and poor living conditions, it's also known for its notorious and brutal treatment of prisoners. Although human rights organizations have raised their voices about torture and abuse within its walls, reports of beatings and psychological torment never cease, making you wonder if this prison was designed by someone who watched too many horror movies. Inmates have described being subjected to physical violence for minor infractions, such as not folding their bedsheets properly or accidentally looking at a guard the wrong way. It's like being in a twisted version of a military camp where the sergeant has lost all sense of proportion. Women at Bang Kwang have reported feeling isolated and powerless, often with no recourse to address complaints about their treatment. In this environment, camaraderie among inmates becomes essential for survival, but can also lead to conflict as they navigate the harsh realities of prison life. The harsh treatment of inmates in Bangkok prisons, particularly the overcrowded conditions and lack of basic necessities, inspired the 1989 miniseries Bangkok Hilton, which dramatizes the struggles of a woman imprisoned for drug trafficking and highlights the grim realities faced by female inmates in such facilities. However, in recent years, there have been efforts to improve conditions at Bang Kwang. In 2013, authorities abolished the use of shackles for most inmates, a small victory celebrated like winning an Oscar in this grim environment. Yet many high-profile inmates remain shackled, leaving advocates to wonder whether real change will ever take hold. Number 6. Antanamora Prison, Madagascar. Located in the heart of Antananarivo, Madagascar's capital, this prison is a shocking reminder that life behind bars does not include the luxury of the island's natural beauty. For the women incarcerated here, Antanamora is an institution with limited resources where survival is both a physical and psychological challenge. It is recorded as one of the most overcrowded and filthy women's prisons in the world. Here, inmates sleep so tightly that many of them have to put their feet on each other's heads. With a space designed to hold 800 female inmates, it is reported to house over 4,000 female detainees. This situation is compounded by a significant number of female pretrial detainees, who make up around 60% of the prison population and are often held for prolonged periods without trial, such as the case of Demoa, a 33-year-old woman who was sent to Antanamora prison for preventive detention on charges of corruption of minors on the 10th of March. She was arrested on suspicion of having a same-sex relationship with her 19-year-old girlfriend, Fee. This followed a complaint to the police by Fee's mother. In Madagascar, the penal code severely punishes anyone who commits an indecent or unnatural act with a person of the same gender under the age of 21. Demoa, who was due to be released immediately and unconditionally, spent an additional 10 months behind bars. This and many other cases are characterized by inadequate sanitation and nutrition. Furthermore, female prisoners are reported to receive only one meal a day, usually consisting of boiled cassava, leading to a high prevalence of malnutrition. The investigation also found that around 38.4% of female prisoners are malnourished, experiencing chronic malnutrition due to inadequate food quality and quantity. Poor hygiene conditions have led to increased levels of illness among female prisoners who have limited availability of medical care. In addition, the combination of overcrowding and poor hygiene creates a perfect environment for the transmission of infectious diseases, raising concerns about outbreaks during times of health emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Recognizing these problems, there have been calls for changes to Madagascar's prison system. In 2019, President Andry Rajoelina visited Antanamora prison and acknowledged the poor conditions. His administration has proposed actions to alleviate prison overcrowding and improve prisoners' living conditions. Efforts include increasing the prison budget to improve food quality and hygiene standards. Number 5. Alcanater Prison, Egypt. Behind those iron bars of Alcanater Prison lies a world of forgotten women, their stories buried beneath layers of concrete, whispers, and despair. Located in Qanater El Khairia, on the outskirts of Cairo, Egypt, this prison is the largest women's prison in the country and serves as a poignant example of the challenges women face in the penal system. Established in the early 1990s, this facility has a complex history and has been the subject of several human rights reports highlighting its harsh conditions. Women complain of overcrowding in cells and poor ventilation. The facilities were initially designed for 500 people, but at the time of interviews, they housed around 1,000 prisoners with limited access to fresh air or sunlight, making living space a nightmare. These cells are overcrowded, poorly ventilated, and lack basic sanitary facilities, rendering the ventilation system almost useless. Female prisoners at Al-Qanater often face harsh conditions, as they must share bathrooms that are not accessible at all times. Instead of proper toilets, they are forced to use buckets for their needs, shared between groups of around 100 women, making the smell of the cell unbearable. This lack of hygiene contributes to health problems and reflects wider systemic neglect within Egypt's prison system. But it is the issue of menstrual hygiene that adds another layer of difficulty and hardship. Sanitary products are almost non-existent, and when they don't have them, they must improvise using clothes, tissues, or whatever they can find, making every breath smell unpleasant. It is humiliating, especially when resources are exhausted and there is nothing you can do but wait. But that's not all. Life in Al-Qanater is marked by routine and restriction, with inmates only allowed family visits every 15 days, each lasting just 10-15 minutes. This limited contact sometimes leads to feelings of isolation and despair among the women, many of whom have children on the outside who depend on them emotionally and financially. The prison administration offers little in terms of rehabilitation or educational programs. Instead, the focus remains on containment rather than reform. Women are often forced to navigate their incarceration without support or guidance from anyone, which can cause mental health issues. Human rights organizations have extensively documented these conditions. In 1992, Middle East Watch collected testimonies from women who described their experiences at Qanater as traumatic and dehumanizing. The lack of adequate food and medical care has led to chronic malnutrition among female inmates, further complicating their already precarious situation. Number 4. Karizak Prison, Iran. What would you do if the air you breathe felt like a challenge? Well, this is the situation for the female inmates of Karizak Prison, a place where endurance is not just tested, but pushed to the absolute limit. Located in the desert southeast of Tehran, Karizak was not even set up for people, but was originally an industrial facility for livestock. You would think that, being the only women's prison in Iran, they would treat women well. But the opposite is true. The prison houses over 1,000 women in conditions that make you question how much one person can endure. Imagine sharing a space so close together that personal boundaries don't just blur, they disappear entirely. Designed for 700 inmates, it currently houses more than 1,700, which is twice the prison's estimated capacity. Health is another major concern, as inmates working in the kitchen and boiler room don't have access to burn medication. Meanwhile, psychotherapists at the prison clinic prescribe sedatives and tranquilizers unchecked. Intravenous solutions are also hard to come by, and lab test results are always late, even for those with cancer. One of the inmates recalled, "The situation at the clinic is a disgrace. They inject one inmate on the same bed where they previously stitched up another with self-inflicted wounds and whose blood has covered the bed. Most of them are malnourished, with the prison charging more than 3 times the market price for fresh fruit. Fruit is brought in once a month, and 90% of the fruit is not allowed. The heat is relentless, the kind that sticks to your skin and seeps into your bones, and the water coming out of the taps is more of a gamble than a guarantee. Some days it is undrinkable, forcing the women to rely on whatever bottled water they can get their hands on. Prison water is salty, muddy, or sometimes there is no drinking water at all. Those who can afford it buy mineral water at 4,000 tomas, which is $1 a bottle. Pregnant women and mothers in the maternity ward are not given nutritious food or safe water to drink. Showers are a rare luxury, with lines stretching long enough to make you think twice about whether it's worth the wait. And when it's finally your turn, the water is cold, barely more than a trickle, and it's gone before you can feel remotely clean. As if that weren't enough, most of the inmates at Karizak are always hungry. They hand out food for 80 people in wards that house more than 120. There is no meat to be seen, unless an inspector from the prison organization is visiting. Under the pretext of the coronavirus, SRA Kodad, the head of the prison, even banned charities from bringing in proper food. Talk about evil at its peak. Number 3. Indiana Women's Prison. Have you ever thought about what life is like inside a women's prison? The Indiana Women's Prison was established in 1873. It all started with a group of reformers who recognized that women faced harsh conditions inside male prisons. Imagine being locked up alongside men. Many believed it was not only unsafe, but also unfair. Thanks to the efforts of advocates like Rhoda Coffin and Sarah Smith, Indiana opened its first facility dedicated to women. The first woman to enter the prison was Sally Hubbard, convicted of multiple murders. Talk about starting off with a bang. However, in Indiana, 4 women have been sentenced to death since 1900, but none of them were executed. One of the most well-known cases involves Paula Cooper, a 15-year-old girl who was sentenced to death as a juvenile for her role in a murder. Her case attracted international attention and led to significant discussions about juvenile justice reform and even the intervention of Pope John Paul II, raising the age of execution from 10 to 16 and implementing laws to prohibit prison employees from having sexual relations with female inmates. This occurred after guards and a therapist were accused of having sexual relations with Cooper. Another notable inmate is Sarah Jo Pender, known for her escape from the Rockville Correctional Facility. Her story highlights not only the problems within the prison system, but also raises questions about mental health support for incarcerated women. The prison was first located near downtown Indianapolis, but later moved to its current location on Girls School Road. From the beginning, the goal was to rehabilitate rather than just punish. Inmates participated in activities such as sewing and laundry, learning skills that would help them change their ways when they got out. Conditions at the women's prison came under question in the summer of 2020 as female prisoners and their relatives complained of inhumane conditions imposed to reduce the spread of the novel coronavirus. About half of the prison's 650 inmates were housed in standalone cabins without air conditioning, running water or toilets. Inmates were also restricted to their cells for 18 to 20 hours a day. The prison opened doors to allow for greater air circulation and eased restrictions in response, but it was unclear whether the issues had been resolved. Number 2. Bafra Prison. Turkey Bafra Prison is among numerous correctional institutions in Turkey that house female prisoners, including individuals guilty of serious crimes and dissidents with political beliefs. The prison is frequently criticized for being overcrowded and having poor living conditions. Imagine being squeezed into a tight area with many other women, where personal space is rare and privacy is absent. It feels like being trapped in a never-ending teamwork where no one is willing to complete their part. Originally created to accommodate a specific number of female prisoners, Bafra frequently exceeds its limit, resulting in overcrowded living spaces that can house 3 times the originally intended population. Female prisoners often complain of having to share cramped cells with several other women, making it a challenge to find a moment of privacy. The absence of essential services such as proper sanitary facilities further worsens the dire situation. As if that weren't enough, reports coming out of Bafra prison about abuse have also become alarming. Female prisoners have shared stories of physical abuse by officers, such as being assaulted for minor offenses or simply for not following orders quickly enough. Many women are reluctant to report abuse because they are afraid of facing retaliation for their actions. We come to the end of this video. Tell us your opinion in the comments box. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss future videos like this one. See you next time!